Thanks for clicking on attheraces.com. We're looking ahead to the novice event at the Cheltenham Festival and now turning our attention to the Neptune Investment Management Novices Hurdle over 2 miles and 5 furlongs. Joining us in the studio to cast his expert eye over the field is pro punter Andy Gibson. And let's check out some of the key contenders for the Neptune Investment Management Novices Hurdle. And Batia for Alan King. Beneficent, a winner last amount for Tony Martin. Willie Mullins has got the very highly regarded Boston Bob in here. John Ferguson with Cotton Mill, who's unbeaten in his 3 runs so far. Willie Mullins also with Mark Your Card. Monkland for Noel Mead. Simonsig for Nicky Henderson. And Sula Sue, another one for Willie Mullins, who's got the horse entered in a couple of races. And it's Boston Bob that tops the market here with Ladbrokes at 5-2. Simonsig also 5-2 at the top of the market alongside him. Monkland at 6-1. 8-1 for Batia. Mark Your Card at 10s alongside Sula Sue. And it's 20-1 bar those. So the key horse for this race really is Boston Bob for the Willie Mullins team. Carries the colours of Andrea and Graham Wiley. He's unbeaten in his 3 starts so far. And arguably the most impressive of those was last time out. He gave a weight and a beating to a subsequent Grade 2 winner. And what have you made of Boston Bob so far, Andy?
Well, this was a really good performance. He was giving £10, wasn't he, this time?
£10, yeah.
Excellent form. Desperate ground that day. For me, I would be heading for the Albert Bartlett with this horse. For me, he's also, I think, 3-1 favourite for the Albert Bartlett. He's 5-2 favourite here. Let's see where we go with him. Willie Mullins has got 3 of the first 6 in the betting here, so you know,
he's got a strong hand.
The market is going to be formed by whatever Willie Mullins decides to do in the next week.
And for what reason would you be looking to go 3 miles with him as opposed to the 2.5? All of its winning form so far has been 2.5 on heavy ground.
Absolutely, yeah. But it just, to me, it just looked, that race looked more about stamina than speed. You know, I think the noises coming from the stable are that he'll probably be just as adept on good ground, on breeding. He'd have every chance of acting on better ground. But I'd rather have proven from a betting point of view, and you know, if from a betting point of view at 5-2, I'd rather oppose a horse coming into this race with heavy ground form to his name. OK, well, just to touch on the horse who was 3rd in that race there, Make Your Mark, another one trained by Willie Mullins, an easy maiden winner. He's got certainly potential to improve. He was very impressive on the previous run, wasn't he? And I think that he would have been particularly unsuited to the ground that day. So if he becomes the Willie Mullins #1, he's a double-figure price along with Sailor Sue. I think possibly we might find that one of those two ends up being very close to favourite for this race. So maybe the thing to do, if we're going to expect maybe Boston Bob to go to the other races, get involved now, anti-post, non-runner, no bet, take the price before it collapses. Get the 2 double-figure prices for those 2 horses, and we don't have to guess then, do we? No. Well, that's some of the leading Irish contenders. One of the leading English contenders, who's 5-2 joint favourite, is Nicky Henderson's Simonsig. We can see him here in winning action up at Kelso. An easy winner on this occasion, and we're talking before about the supreme horses who travel well in their races. This certainly is a horse who travels well. He does, and he's won 3 races incredibly easily with his head in his chest. The form of this race, you've got the second horse there, Nakarabo, who's heading for the Gold Cup, and he'll probably run through plenty of beaten horses and come 6th, 7th, 8th in the Gold Cup. The form doesn't add up to much. He was a little bit more than a little bit untidy at the last 2 hurdles this day. I think the low sun probably didn't help Barry Geraghty that day, I would imagine. See, slight concerns there, and you have to have at the back of your mind the fact that he appeared to empty over 2.5 miles at Sandown, admittedly on ground that was softer than the official good to soft. Nevertheless, it's got to be at the back of your mind. This horse is 5-2 favourite. He'll travel incredibly well. I think if you're going to back this horse, you probably want to be taking a little bit of insurance out when he's travelling on the bridle with 2 to jump. That would be a massive concern to me, given the way he does travel in his races. He came there against Fingal Bay, he was all out, he was cruising all over him, gun to his head. There was nothing there. The fact he's got to do that over the same trip around Cheltenham and get up the hill, I'd be really trying to get him rather than back him. It's you know, very similar to the Henderson one in the Arkle, Sprinter Sacre, isn't it? It's a similar story. What will they find off the bridle? We'll see. And we saw last year very little when Sprinter Sacre came off the bridle. But let's have another look at the Monkland, trained by Noel Mead. Another one of the Irish contenders in this race. We can see him here over 2.5 miles at Naas. He's unbeaten. There's a good form line here. We've got Boston Bob who's beaten Lyrene Legend. This horse also beaten Lyrene Legend. So there's got to be in there with a similar collateral form chance as Boston Bob. Yeah, and he's 3 times the price. At those prices, I would prefer Monkland to Boston Bob, not least because Monksland's definitely going to go for this race. You know, again, it's a horse coming on the back of 2 heavy ground wins coming into the Cheltenham Festival. He's going to be on faster ground, they say he's going to be fine, but we hear that every year from horses. You'd far rather have proven, wouldn't you?
You would do. It's a massive concern, isn't it, for a lot of the Irish horses that do come over. They've been running on heavy ground all season. Yeah. And it's an imponderable to know how they're going to handle ground conditions. Well, one horse who will handle the ground conditions is Batia, and we can now hear from his trainer, Alan King.
When we first got him, I thought he was as good a bumper horse as we'd had, and he won at Fontwell first time out. And he couldn't win another bumper, which A, surprised me, and B, disappointed me. And for whatever reason, he's just taken time, and we ran him at Cheltenham New Year's Day. And I wasn't that hopeful, to be honest. And he finished a very good second behind Ian Williams' horse, and ever since then his work's just got better and better. And he was very impressive the other day, back at Cheltenham at the end of January. Seems in real good order, and he'll head straight for the Novice. I mean, he has other entries, but I'm 99% certain he'll run the Neptune.
Yeah, technically he's a second season novice as well, isn't it? Do you think that experience will help him?
Good. I mean, a couple of runs, as you say, last year. Over hurdles, but his progress in the last few months has been quite staggering.
Well, Alan King calling his progress there over the last few months quite staggering, and that's probably fair to say. It's taken a while to get off the mark, but he did so last time out. Maybe helped by the mistake of Broadback Bob, but you couldn't fault his attitude or the way he stayed at the hill.
No, and he's improved with each of his 4 runs, hasn't he? And certainly the thing I love about this horse for this race is that the last 2 runs have been over the course and distance. He's travelled incredibly well in both races and found an awful lot more last time than he had done the previous time. Clearly a horse on the upgrade. The race he won last time is the same race that was contested by Bobsworth and Rock on Ruby, both who filled themselves with glory at the Cheltenham Festival soon afterwards last season. He's got the most obvious profile for this race. He's got form on the ground, form over the course and distance. There's a possibility a horse might be a little bit classy for him on the day, but I think in terms of an each-way investment, 8-9 to 1, I think he's very strong myself.
And what would you think would have happened? I thought he was maybe a fortunate winner the last day. Broadback Bob made the mistake at the final flight. Do you think he may still have won, or just gone very close?
No, I thought he would have. I thought Batia would have won that day anyway. I mean, probably having a little bit of money on him helps that view a little bit. But interesting. But no, I was fairly confident approaching the final hurdle, but I could easily be wrong.
And as you say, it's been very progressive, and even his previous run when he was second to Barbatos, he was a horse held in very high regard before injury intervened for Tom George.
He was, but which then brings in the sort of the sadness around Fingal Bay not running, of course, because he turned that horse over very easily around Cheltenham. Probably would have been the strongest contender. It's quite surprising that you've ended up with 2 5-2 favourites, because Fingal Bay, who would have had a much more obvious profile, probably would have been slightly bigger than that. Very likely, and yet those two are 5-2 joint favourites for it.
Those of us holding anti-post franchise for Fingal Bay can feel the pain. But let's move on and have another look at some of the Irish contenders. And we had a race in Ireland quite recently where there was a massive shock. Beneficent got up to win at 50 to 1, and you'd have to say this was a very fine tactical ride.
Yeah, and I think I heard correctly that I think Ruby Walsh said if he could have this day again, he would. And you can see why. Again, Sailor Sue might end up in this field. I would have thought that they would fancy turning that form around at Cheltenham, personally. What do you think?
I completely agree. 2 miles, 2 furlongs that day. Ruby held up at the back, made a lot of ground through the closing stages, didn't quite get there over the longer trip, and Beneficent was quite exposed coming into the race. He'd been pulled up on his previous start. I can see that being turned around comprehensively. But one of the horses, just to mention, who might be a bit of a price here, is from a yard who's been doing very well through this season. John Ferguson, the bloodstock advisor to Sheikh Mohammed's been saddling winners left, right and centre. And we can see here Cotton Mill going on to win. This is at Fakenham. He went on to win at Grade 2 level after this. And another horse who's progressive, certainly goes on good ground and has got winning form at Grade 2 level.
Yeah, sure. He's and the Ferguson yard have been a really interesting yard to follow this season. And it will be particularly interesting to see how this one... He's got a couple of fancied horses, this one included. I'd expect him to run well on good ground. Flat speed. The form at Warwick, you would have to say, would leave him with a little bit to find. So he hasn't actually got anything in the book that would say that you would have him down as a single figure price for this. But I'm not sure what he is. What is he? 14, 16, something.
25
like that?
to 1.
Is he 25 to 1? You said that with the relish of a man who's on.
No, I've not backed it yet. Right. But I thought...
But he's interesting. He's interesting, without a doubt.
And it's a stable who you could well get a bit of value figured into the price, given the stable's never been to Cheltenham before, never had runners in these big races.
No, you're persuading me.
Okay, so we've got to have a little bit each way on Cotton Mill at 25 as an interest bet. But Boston Bob and Simonsig at 5-2, Monkland 6-1, Batia 8-1, mark your card at 10-1. Where would it be looking here, Andy?
I've had a really decent bet on Batia each way at a double figure price. I'd still back him 9-1. I think he'll be thereabouts without a doubt, and or as certain as you can be. Might find something too good, but I think he's a very strong each way bet. What about you? Looks
a very solid contender. Well, I'd agree actually. Batia, I think at the prices at the moment, if Boston Bob was to run, I'm hearing from Ireland that Willie thinks this could be the very best novice he's ever trained. So wherever he turns up, I want to be with him. So I'd be taking the 5-2. But if he goes for the 3 mile race, I'd join you with Batia.